Since childhood, I have had many unanswered questions about biblical texts. The God I Have Questions series is a journey that explores existential queries, challenging us to reflect on our beliefs and understanding of biblical mysteries. My first question is, who is us? This video is part 1. Be on the lookout for part 2 as we dive deeper into the answer to today's question. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss out. Hit that like button. Let's jump right in. Genesis 1 verse 26 reads, "Let us make man in our image after our own likeness." This statement has often confused me as it hints at more than one entity being involved in this conversation. When I needed clarity on this particular verse, I asked the leaders and teachers in the church and my family members, but the answers given never set right with my spirit. Did you know the Hebrew language does not have a term that indicates God as we understand Him? God as an omnipotent, transcendent spiritual entity who is to be worshipped. Neither did I. In the Hebrew language, Elohim is the oldest term for God, but is translated as judges, legislators, governors, the bright ones, and the powerful ones. Did you notice the plurality for the term Elohim? El is the singular term for Elohim according to Hebrew scholars. The Old Testament Parsing Guide, used by scholars who know the Hebrew language, is a biblical guide to the verbal form. The verb connected to Elohim in this scholar's guide is plural. The scholars must respect the letter of the Hebrew text exactly. In the Bibles read by families, the term Elohim is translated to singular because it must indicate a singular God, even if the term is plural in Hebrew. The individual and family Bibles were written to convey an idea and a different concept from what is written in the original Hebrew Bible. Various commentators from different schools of religion try to explain why the plural verb might be translated into the singular. But each time their explanation always has the purpose of affirming that Elohim refers to the one God, and the plurality represents the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. One of the issues here is the Holy Trinity is a Christian belief that began long after the Hebrew canon was written. To refute the singular translation, one can look to Psalm 82, which speaks of an assembly of Elohim. Are we to believe that in this assembly only Yahweh was real and the other entities are imagined? In ancient times, the plurality of the term Elohim was always understood to represent a diversity of beings. There's even a reference to a body called the Sky Council in the Hebrew canon. The Sky Council was comprised of the powerful ones from the sky who came down to earth. Understanding this plurality of Elohim resolves many moral conflicts I had with God. Like Paul Wallace states in the video I've linked for you in the description, if you read the earlier Elohim stories as if they were God's stories, then you would believe in a God whose actions you would have to rationalize, even the most brutal ones. We would have to believe such things of God as we would not believe of the most savage and unjust of men. And that was the moral issue I was having. I could not reconcile the xenophobic, homicidal, jealous God in the Old Testament with the loving, merciful, and omnipotent God whom Jesus spoke of. I mean, why didn't God, and I'm using air quotes here, know that Adam and Eve had eaten from that tree before He returned to the garden if He is all-knowing? That's another question for another day. But anyway, as Mauro Biglino states in the video linked in the description, If we read the Bible with the utmost respect for the biblical authors, while keeping the term they use for God, but understanding that God represents the Elohim in the Old Testament, we realize that we are faced with a Bible different from the one we are told, but a Bible much more fascinating, more concrete, more understandable, but above all, much more logical than we were told. The Bible, more specifically the Old Testament, is not a book about God in the way we've been taught to believe, but rather is representative of a plethora of entities from the beginning of the Hebrew canon to the very end. So to answer today's question, us represents two or more Elohim, speaking about the creation of man. Specifically, it was Enki and Enlil. Nimma and Enki were instrumental in the creation of Eve. Us does not represent the Holy Trinity as it is a Christian doctrine, and does not align with the theology of the biblical authors. The final edits of the Old Testament included the layering of beautiful and profound theology over the top of ancient texts. Unfortunately, this layering resulted in confusion, unreconciled texts, moral conflicts, and most importantly, a misrepresentation of God as I know him. He who is the creator of the cosmos and everything in it. He is the reason I move, live, and breathe. And above all else, he is love. Join us for part 2 as we learn more about Enki, Enlil, and Ninmah. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.